What's up, guys? It's the Bluebloods, and we are back with another episode. It's our first episode of 2021, so happy New Year's to all you guys out there listening. We have a very, very special episode today. It is just a college football playoff episode. We are only covering the playoff games. We're covering all the storylines that came along with those, analyzing the way too early national championship and all that good stuff. We're talking the Rose Bowl. We're talking the Sugar Bowl. So we have a full show today, guys. So let's go ahead and kick it off. So to start off, we are going to Dallas, Texas, in which the Rose Bowl was moved there due to some COVID stuff. But this game kind of disappointed, especially if you were a Notre Dame fan. 31-14 win for the Crimson Tide of Alabama. Brandon, I don't think anybody was surprised here. The only surprise here was that Bama didn't score 60.
I was about to say, I think the only surprise here is that Bama didn't win by more. They didn't cover the spread, which is, good in a way. You know, if you're Notre Dame, that's great because you didn't let Bama beat the spread on you. That 20-point, that was a ridiculous playoff spread. They didn't do it. Good for you. They scored with a minute left to cover that spread. Thank you, Notre Dame. Signed, Notre Dame betters. But this game, what surprised me the most, Zach, I guess, is that this Notre Dame defense kind of collapsed. And I don't even want to say that's a surprise. That's just what an Alabama offense would do to you. Notre Dame gave up 31 points. The only other times they've done that this season were against Clemson. We'll get to them later. But I don't know. I guess they're different. We can't really compare Alabama and Clemson. There's no way we can. But I don't want to go down
this weekend.
I was about to be like, well, if Alabama only scored 31 on, but I'm an idiot, so don't listen to me at all. I don't want that on paper. Go ahead and throw that take right out the door.
See, now you have to say, oh, if Alabama only scored 31, I bet Ohio State scores.
Look, and you're going to hear it from me next game, but man, Ohio State is scary. That might be the scariest team in the world. No, but Notre Dame, I guess the only surprising thing is that Kyron Williams, I think, overperformed. Like, he performed better than I thought he would in this game, and that this Notre Dame defense collapsed. Other than that, it was chalk. Devonta Smith went for 7 receptions, 130 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's insane. Najee Harris had 15 carries, 125 yards, no touchdowns. You don't really need to score touchdowns
But he caught a body.
He did catch a body. He did do that. People aren't talking about that nearly enough.
Bro, that hurdle was absolutely disrespectful.
I didn't know a person was allowed to jump that high. I really didn't.
Dude,
and then he kept running.
He hit it full stride. Like it was like he just blinked, and it was like, oh, he gone. Like,
put this man on the track team. Put him on the U.S. Olympic track team for 100-meter hurdles.
Brandon, this kid is 6'2", 230.
that could legally be registered as a weapon, I think.
Listen, I know the Wright brothers get taught in history classes. I think Najee Harris should be taught in history classes because he is the first human in flight. He has mastered that. And listen, Brandon, this dude has been in Bama for years now. Why do people keep going low on him?
I don't know. It does not make sense, especially this Notre Dame defense that we've given so much praise to.
Right? I guess it is because he's 6'2", 230. So if you go high, you're probably going to get Derrick Henry. So you're going to get either bodied or flown over. It's probably a lot less painful to be hurdled. Maybe not emotionally, but physically, it's less. It's less of an issue. So
yeah.
Najee Harris, man, this kid is just. You can't say enough. And listen, I know Travis Etienne, we're going to get to him later. Might be a better pass catcher and all that. We see what Derrick Henry's doing in the league. Najee Harris has to be getting first-round consideration at this point.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
And like you said, Devonta Smith. Brandon, so, Don, we had Don Munson on the podcast before the game, before the playoffs started. We highlighted the Ohio State Clemson game. He brought up the Heisman voting shouldn't be till after the playoffs in the national championship game. So do you think if Heisman voting was delayed, Devonta Smith would even be a bigger favorite now?
Yes, absolutely. Especially after that just That what was that? It was like a magic catch. I mean, how'd he do that? It was like an illusion when he dragged that toe, and I don't know how that was a touchdown. I mean, I watched the replay. It looked like a touchdown. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't by any means. I'm just saying I don't know how a human's allowed to do that.
Listen, and his nickname, not only is he such a good player and he's having an amazing year, he's going to be a future NFL star. Honestly, Devonta Smith's nickname is a number one pick. I mean, the Slim Reaper.
No, I'm
Come
telling
on.
you. I'm
Come
telling
on.
You. What I will say, Zach,
respectful.
I read, I think it was during the game. It may have been right before the game, but there were like some facts about about Devonta Smith. So the first one was that he's from Amite, Louisiana, because they were playing the game in New Orleans. So they're like, oh, okay, he's coming back home, kind of. Not really. Amite's like an hour and a half away, but after that, it was like, oh, he likes to cook, something like that. Something ridiculous, like, oh, red beans and rice. And then the third one was that his barber travels from Louisiana all the way to Tuscaloosa to cut his hair. And I'm not – look, I don't want to talk about appearance on the podcast, but have you seen this man's hair? Because I don't believe it, dude. And it might just be like he's had a helmet on, but if his barber's driving all the way, like, find a new barber. I'm sorry. Find a new barber.
Listen, if I'm that barber, keep that job for as long as you can, because cutting Devonta Smith's hair is probably the best thing you'll ever do in life.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. Listen, you get to go. Well, I don't know. Have they announced what they're doing for the Heisman ceremony? It's over Zoom. It has to be, right?
Right. You would think so.
Maybe. Maybe they'll go to New York and it'll just be them and like chairs across the room. Now, it'll just be a silent Heisman Trophy ceremony.
Right.
But your barber gets to go with you to the Heisman ceremony, give you a nice fresh cut. Like, listen, I know, I'm in grad school and all that. I'm getting a PhD. I would trade places with the barber immediately.
Absolutely. No doubt. I'd quit my job tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Screw all the finances. You can go give the dude a lineup and you'll be set for life. But, I want to talk about Mac Jones a little bit, Brandon. I feel like it's really hard to judge what he should be getting. Should he be getting too much credit? Is he getting not enough? Like, where do you give him the credit? Because 25 for 30, almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns is nothing to scoff at. But I feel like everyone's just on one end of the spectrum or the other. It's either, oh, well, if he didn't have Devonta Smith, he wouldn't be doing that. Or it's, oh, he is the one carrying the offense. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Right.
I don't know where to put him, but I think he had an outstanding game. I really feel like this Alabama team, Brandon, is almost perfect.
Oh, I mean,
I know Nick
almost.
Saban.
What are you talking about? Almost.
You see, I'm trying to keep Nick from being on Nick Saban's canceled list because he's going to say I'm rat poison and I'm not going to be allowed in the state of Alabama again. But I honestly feel like he is. This team is built almost perfectly. Brandon, where is their weakness and what is their weakness?
No, I honestly don't know what their weakness is. I guess the weakness would be like the media, because Nick Saban gets very frustrated with them quite frequently, it seems.
Bro, if that headset, I was sweating. My anxiety level was on 10 billion. I was like, he put that headset on for the third time, and I was like, if it doesn't work, he's gonna hit her with it. I thought he was going to jail.
I mean, oh no, Nick Saban goes to jail. Oh no, what would I do?
Guess what? They still win. You're looking at this game that they held Notre Dame in check for the most part. Yes, Notre Dame had 24 first downs. They led time of possession. They had 375. They forced 1 turnover, but a lot of those yards came in garbage time when this game was out of hand. And you look, Brandon, the first quarter, it was 14-0 with 4 minutes left in the first quarter. And we had a watch party down here in Alabama, and everyone here was like, "All right, it's over." It was 14-0, man. We had 85% of the game left, and everyone was like, "All right, man, what time's the Clemson game start?"
Gotta be soon, right?
It's so outrageous that when Brandon, I felt that way when it was 7-0.
Yeah, well, there was never a point in this game where I was like, "Oh yeah, Notre Dame's still in it." Not once. Sometimes even during the Clemson game, we'll get to that. Like I said, we are getting to that. So trust me on that. There were times when I was like, oh yeah, Clemson's still in this for sure. And like, I'm pretty sure Ohio State had the lead for that. Maybe not the whole game. I can't remember the very beginning of it, but for most of the game, they had a lead. And so I was like, oh yeah, and Clemson's still in this. Not this game. Notre Dame was never in this game. Like not, it doesn't like even the initial kickoff, Notre Dame was in the game.
No, no, Brandon, the win probability for ESPN never never got below 81% for Alabama, and that's what it was at opening kickoff.
That's ridiculous. And I
That,
feel
that's
like if you're Notre
that's
Dame, you got to fight ESPN. I think.
yeah, Brandon. After they scored 14-0, it was in the 93 percentile range.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, even ESPN didn't even have any faith. And I want to get to some Notre Dame stuff, man. We can't just talk about Bama. I know they won the game, but I didn't feel like Ian Book played a bad game. I
no,
mean, he was efficient through the air, 27 for 39. He threw for 230. He had 55 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. I mean, he played decent, but I think what we saw, Brandon, is the same criticism myself and you have been giving him, is that he's almost just like too much of a game manager. Like, yes, he mostly takes care of the ball with only one interception, but what does he do to take the team to the next level? Like Mac Jones can take that next step and take the team to the next level. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, sometimes Kellen Mond, but that's the same kind of critique for him. But I mean, what can he do to improve the team?
right, right. I mean, and I guess it hurts him because he's not like the typical game manager either, where he's gonna have that high percentage or that completion percentage. He's gonna have a 1,000 passes and 1,000 completions. Yeah, he had 30 passes in this game and he completed most of them. He had no passing touchdowns. He had an interception. I think that's where he hurts his team.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, so I honestly might just be crazy here, but I don't really like his deep game either. I don't feel like he pushes the ball down the field very well.
Well,
He does.
he's not like a standard quarterback. That's what I was getting at. I mean, he's this. I mean, he mostly throws like when he does pass, he'll dump it off to his tight ends. Every now and then, I mean, he might throw a little bit of a deeper route, but I mean, he's gonna check the ball down. He's gonna throw a post to his tight ends, and he's gonna tuck and run the ball. I mean, that's the kind of quarterback he is.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like this offense, they need to have that next dimension. I
Right.
feel like if they want to get over the hump and compete with, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, et cetera, they're going to have to find that next dimension in their game. And yes, they beat Clemson. I get it. And, that win over Clemson probably looked real bad right now. But Clemson was missing so many pieces on that defense that, like, yes, you might be able to push the ball against that team. But you have to have that next level of a passer. He ran 55 yards, but only 3 yards per rush. Brandon, I think you need to be more dynamic with your legs against a team like Alabama.
Right.
And I feel like I really feel like this Alabama defense, their weakness, as crazy as it sounds, might be linebacker, and that's with Dylan Moses in there.
That fair enough. I mean, this Alabama team is very complete.
That should show you how good this team is. I mean, Will Anderson, monster. Christian Baremore, monster. Jordan Battle, Christian Harris, Patrick Surtain. I mean, the list goes on and on and on here. And I'm so impressed. But Brandon, there's a storyline that came out today. It's kind of breaking news, I guess. When it comes out, it might not be. But Texas fires Tom Herman. They're supposedly hiring Steve Sarkisian. Can you speak to, like, how's that going to affect the preparation for this national championship?
Honestly, in this Nick Saban led team, I don't know that it does affect it. I know Steve
Right.
Sarkisian is a great offensive coordinator. I think this is a great hire for Texas. But I mean, Sark's going to stay there at the national championship. He's going to coach that game. And even if he didn't coach that game, I mean, I think that he's prepared this offense well enough. I think Nick Saban has his whole team prepared. I don't think it. I mean, I honestly cannot see this hurting them at all.
No, I honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, and we've seen this happen. I mean, if there's any coach in the country that's prepared that is like ready to prepare for a game with an assistant coach just leaving, it has to be Nick Saban, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This dude has written the protocol for handling the situation.
I mean, and he has analysts on his team that are ex head coaches. So, I mean, they
Right.
look the next man up. Next man up applies to coaches as well.
What do you think about the rumor? I believe there's a rumor that they might hire Dan Quinn, who just got fired from the Falcons as the head coach.
That would be very interesting, and that's kind of on par for Alabama, honestly. Um,
Yes.
I think that's. I mean, Dan Quinn's a good coach. You know, maybe things didn't work out well in his the last couple years in Atlanta, but man, that is a bananas hire for Alabama if they make it.
Right. That would be an outrageous thing. But guys, Notre Dame can't get over the hump. Brandon, if you're just taking an assessment of this program, what's the next step here? I mean, you have this national reputation that you can't beat the best of the best, and it's hurting your play. It's going to end up hurting your playoff chances because people are like, why do we keep putting them in here just to get blown out? If you are tired with the task of making this Notre Dame team a contender, where do you start?
That's tough because like, what are you going to do? You're going to fire Brian Kelly? You can't do that. I mean,
No, that would be the dumbest thing of all time.
well, he has this program. I mean, playing so well. You know, their coordinators getting hired at other places. I mean, I don't know what you can do. It's not like you can go fire coordinators. They're leaving. I mean, they're doing their own thing. They're highly esteemed coaches. I don't know what you do. I mean, I would say maybe consider joining a conference. I think that may help them, but they did it this season and they made it to the playoff and they still got
Yeah.
beat bad. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to tell you. I honestly do not know. There's a reason I'm not in that position to make hires or to make decisions for this Notre Dame program on how to succeed. I don't know. I mean, they're recruiting the right players. I think they're a very talented team. I think they just had a bad matchup against Alabama. Um, I mean, and is there a good matchup against Alabama, really?
No, I mean, not this year, it looks like. But, you know, what do you think of people's take? Like, I believe it was Colin Cowherd who said that. So you probably hate it just because
Yeah, I
I
already hate it. I don't even know what it is, but I hate it.
I did that. So he said that the reason Notre Dame can't compete is because the SEC has almost like an unfair advantage because they don't have as high academic standards. They're in the South. It's hot. It's nice. You don't have to go up north in the cold, and that they have like access to the better facilities and all that kind of stuff. And that Notre Dame isn't supposed to be able to beat like an Alabama.
I feel like that's a little unfair to say that they're in the South, so they're stupid. Also, pretty unfair to say they're in the South, so they have nicer so they don't have to travel up north. I mean, once you're in the playoff, you're playing in a dome or you're playing at the Rose Bowl where it never rains. So and it's never cold. What's the big deal? I mean, Notre Dame just got whooped in Jerry World. And Clemson got whooped by a Midwestern team, a kind of a northern team in the Sugar Bowl. So like what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Higher academic. I get it for Notre Dame. Notre Dame does have really high academic standards. But I mean, we're still talking about like flagship universities in their respective states, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought it was a bad take, but I just had to ask you. But I mean, I think the first step, Brandon, is you have to get one of those just program changing quarterbacks.
Right.
You're not in Alabama that's going to be able to take a Mac Jones and make him what Alabama's making him. I'm not saying Ian Book's a bad quarterback, but like we just talked about how he's not the type of quarterback that's going to beat Alabama. I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, you have to like they come out every recruiting class, man. You got to find yourself a Justin Fields. You got to find yourself, I mean, a Justin Herbert, someone like that could take your program to the next level. And the next thing, Brandon, they have to find some wide receiving threats. They
Right.
have to have some deep threat speed. The O line's always been there for Notre Dame. The D line and the linebackers, I think, have been there. The secondary came along this year, but how are you going to replace your D coordinator? Because he's off to Vandy now.
Right.
That's a huge hire. If Brian Kelly that's a hire that's going to determine if Brian Kelly's going to be at Notre Dame for another extended amount of time. If he messes up and that defense falls apart, Brian Kelly won't be at Notre Dame another 5 years.
No, I can definitely see that. I mean, it's the same sort of situation as I'm not gonna compare him to Tom Herman because I think he's a much better head coach, but it's the same sort of situation in Texas where they're not performing terribly. I think they've been competitive over the past few seasons with Brian Kelly. They haven't lost too much. They've made it to their conference championship the one year they were in a conference. But are you going to settle for this? And I don't even want to say mediocrity because they've made the playoff in the past. However, I mean, twice in the past, 4 years now, 3 years. And so that's not really mediocrity. That's good. But I mean, every time you get there, you get blown out. So, I mean, you kind of catch my gist there. So what do you have to do? I mean, you had to move on at some point and you have to strive for greatness instead of settling for making it to the playoff and then like losing the semifinal. Like you're not even making it to the national championship.
Yeah, I completely agree. But guys, Notre Dame's season ends in a tough way. Bama moves on to the national championship. And now we go to the All-State Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, Brandon. Ohio State really upsetting Clemson 49-28. And listen, we were wrong. We were very wrong. I was historically wrong. Ohio State's legit.
They are the real
a statement.
Dude, and what I want to say before we do anything else, I want to apologize to Trey Sermon on behalf of both of us.
That's a grown man.
Because I was the one who said, this Ohio State team seems kind of similar to last year. I know they lost some key pieces. They don't have a J.K. Dobbins. Seems like they have something better, like as in this game anyway, because 193 yards on the ground, plus I think like 41 receiving for Trey, 61 receiving for Trey Sermon. Come on.
Yeah.
Out of his absolute mind, blew Travis Etienne out of the water. I mean, he won. He was the clear winner of this running back battle.
I mean, Travis Etienne, Brandon, 32 yards rushing.
Terrible.
This has become like a trend for him almost. I mean, I know that we were so high on him, and we've had guests that were. I mean, this dude has failed to perform in the biggest games.
He's had a tough season, man, and it's. I mean, it's not even just a tough season. It like you said, it's on the big stage. I mean, it is a trend, I don't know. I would like to be able to defend him here, but I don't know that I can.
I mean, this game, it looked so competitive, man. First quarter, 14-14. I was like, man, it's a roll now. At halftime, it was 35-14.
Yeah.
And it got completely out of hand. And Ohio State outgains them 639 to 444, forces 2 turnovers, controlled the time possession, had more first downs. I mean, they were the better team from the second this game kicked off. And, there are some storylines from this game. I want to get to the most controversial one. Brandon, I don't think these two teams can meet up without some type of controversy. No. Okay, so I'll get you to answer this in 2 parts. The targeting call on their defensive leader one, by the letter of the law, was it a good call? 2, should that have been an automatic ejection?
Okay, so I want to go ahead and answer the second part okay, so the first part, yes, by the letter of the law, I think that was targeting. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm on the wrong side of this a lot of the time. Like, I see things that people don't because targeting, if you read the actual rule, like it's pretty complex. I mean, it can be just forcible contact to what they deem a defenseless receiver. It can be a hit, a blow to the helmet. It can, with your forearm, any forcible contact to the helmet. I mean, that could even be a shoulder. So that makes me like it makes me grind my teeth when the announcer like, I don't understand how that's targeting. When someone just knocks the lights out of somebody with their shoulder, like that's still targeting. Or when you hit somebody with the crown of your head. I mean, there's several. Like, you can hit them with your forearm and it can be targeting. But so yes, by the letter of the law, I think it was targeting. You may disagree with me. That is what it is. Should he have been ejected? Absolutely not. That is the most ridiculous rule, law, whatever you want to call it in college football. That's like the worst. That's the worst thing in the world. Not in the world, in college football. Well, maybe not even college football. There's a lot of really bad things happening in college football that we don't address in this podcast for good reason. In the actual game, in these 60 minutes, it might be the worst thing. Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand it. I mean, why kick a kid out for the entire game? Like, you can't even prove that it was intentional. I mean, football is it's so bang bang that we have to review everything. I mean, they have to review targeting. So if it's that bang bang, do you really think that a player can control where he's hitting another player? I mean, I get it. If you duck the crown of your helmet and you're intentionally, if you Vontaze Burfict it, then yeah, you're ejected. You're gone. You should be put in jail. But if it's bang bang like that play was, don't throw the kid out. Throw the 15-yard penalty. Do whatever you need to do. Don't kick this kid out of a semifinal game and maybe alter the track of this team.
Okay, so I agree with you. By the letter of the law, yeah, it might have been. But I do question, one, was he defenseless? Because at that point, he's not a wide receiver catching a pass, falling or whatever. And two, he's not a quarterback in the pocket.
Yeah.
He's a runner. And look, let me ask you something, Brandon. If that's Trey Sermon running the ball, and he gets hit like that, would they call that penalty?
No, probably not.
Two, if he doesn't get hurt, do they call that penalty?
I don't know if they called it before he got hurt or not. So I'm not.
No, they didn't call it on the field. They reviewed it.
Oh, okay. Man, I don't know why I'm like losing track. I didn't even drink on Saturday, so I don't know what's going on. Or Friday. Yeah, it was Friday. I didn't drink that day, but yeah, it's a tough call. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and so the thing that gets me is in case you guys don't know, is James Skalski. He is the same. So this kid's a senior now, Brandon. I mean, I guess he could come back, but he probably is. I would be shocked. So, I mean, he's probably a draft pick right now. I mean, he's probably arguably one of the best defensive players on Clemson's team. But in his two biggest games as a Clemson athlete, he had two questionable targeting calls.
Right.
And in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, he got kicked out of the LSU national championship late in that game when it was still a game, and gave LSU first and goal, Brandon?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was one of my favorite plays.
Yeah, and I say questionable, it was definitely targeting, but Jefferson was falling, and I like Brandon said, how do you adjust when the dude all of a sudden drops 3 levels? And
right.
A question. The thing that is my thing is if it's all about the player adjusting and the player moving their head, what about when are we going to start calling targeting on running backs?
Right.
When they duck their heads.
Well, it's never on the offensive player for some reason. It should be. I agree with you there.
And I saw a tweet from a national guy. I don't want to mention the name because this is going to be a little ridiculous, but it really got under my skin. Is that the tweet said that the Clemson player should be ejected because he's an unteachable, and he's like ignorant because he didn't change his tackling style, and he'll never make it in this game, and that he should never be able to play football again.
That's a little unfair.
And he works for Fox Sports. I'll let y'all figure that out. But
I would like to know.
The fact that someone would tweet that out about a kid in the middle of a football game, and this analyst did not play football either. The fact that he has not played football at that level, and that he's making judgments about a kid's character and I don't think the hit was dirty. I want to put that out there. I don't think the hit was dirty at all.
No, it wasn't malicious. I mean, he didn't try to hurt them.
No, and if we're calling it targeting because a dude's helmet hit a dude in the ribs, then I don't know how we're going to keep playing football, Brandon.
Right.
And maybe I did drink a little bit Friday night. And I tweeted out that we should take the pads off and play a different form of football. But I just think there has to be a line, Brandon. And I know I'm going to repeat this. This has been said by everyone. I mean, when are they going to do this like a technical foul where there's levels to it?
Right.
Because the argument, the argument I always hear is it should be a flagrant 1 and 2, with one being 15 yards for non-intentional and the other one being 15 yards and an ejection for intentional. I don't even think that will solve it, Brandon. I think if it's something where a player falls, it's completely accidental, it's not super violent, I think that should maybe be a 5-yard penalty at most. 15
Really?
yards changes a game.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. That's where we disagree. I think it should definitely be 15 yards.
Okay, but I don't think it should be until we can put blame on the offensive player too. If an offensive player falls down at the last second and it is deemed almost impossible for that player to adjust, then that should not be on the defensive player, and that should not be 15 yards.
I hear you.
I mean, I get this whole safety measure, and I'm not saying targeting shouldn't be a penalty, but we have to stop looking at it so black and white because it's a completely gray issue here.
Right.
And I think that's where it gets. And the fact that a college senior, okay, I know it's COVID, he can come back, but in a normal season, a fact that a college senior, a defensive captain, a team captain, gets kicked out of his last game with the chance to go to the national championship, I think that is absolute blasphemy, in my opinion.
Blasphemy.
I mean,
Blasphemy to the
dude,
college football gods.
it is. And Brandon, I know people are going to say, well, that's just one player, Zach. No, 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 no. We talked about the stat on this podcast. Tyler Davis got hurt before that play, Brandon. And then
Yeah.
Skowski's kicked out. What happened after that ejection?
Right.
It went from a 7-point game when he got kicked out to giving them 15 yards into the red zone, and they scored on the next play.
Right.
And then it went downhill from there. And I totally believe in momentum plays, just like the fumble last year. That was a momentum play that shifted all the momentum in Clemson's favor, and so did that targeting penalty that went against Ohio State.
Right.
And, enough on the controversy. I want to talk about Justin Fields, man. What a game.
I mean, he just proved all of us wrong.
Man, 6 touchdowns, 385 yards. He did have a pick, but he was 22 for 28. Man, if he would have played like this all year, Ohio State would have been – I know they're undefeated 7-0, but they would have been beating people by 100.
Right.
And, building off of that, Lawrence had 400 yards, Brandon, 2 touchdowns, a pick. Social media was a buzzing, just like always, Brandon. Do you buy the fact that this game proved that Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence?
Not a chance. Not at all. It's not like these two quarterbacks were on the field and they were playing against each other. That's just not what happened. What happened was I think Ohio State as a whole played better. I mean, if you take away Chris Olave and Trey Sermon, does Justin Fields get the same things done? I'm not saying that Clemson doesn't have weapons themselves. I'm just saying that Trey Sermon and Chris Olave had games of a lifetime. I mean, am I wrong there? Am I wrong in saying that? I mean, Trey Sermon had almost he had over 150 more rushing yards than Travis Etienne, and he had 3 fewer passing yards, or receiving yards. Chris Olave, I mean, while he did have the same or some very similar numbers to Cornell Powell for Clemson, I feel like Justin Fields spread the ball out a lot more, and he had a lot more. He had a lot more weapons on his sideline. I mean, I don't really know how to explain it, but Trevor Lawrence didn't look awful. I mean,
No.
He was still getting it done. 400 yards passing is 400 yards passing. And let me tell you, when Zach and I talk about Trevor Lawrence, like he is this once in a lifetime talent in college football, he is. It's not just, Justin Fields is really, really good. I think that he'll end up in the NFL. I'm not sure if he'll start right away, but he will play in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence has the chance to go to the NFL, start right away, and not stop starting for the next 20 years. I mean, he is that good.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, if you had an argument with a friend today actually, about this, because he was saying that, Justin Fields solidified the number 1 spot and outplayed Trevor Lawrence in the biggest moment. I'm like, okay, so you have one game where Justin Fields outplayed Trevor Lawrence. What about last year? Because Trevor Lawrence outplayed Justin Fields.
Right.
What about when Trevor Lawrence, as a true freshman, outplayed the entire Alabama team?
Right.
What about the 3 seasons of film we have on Trevor Lawrence, Brandon?
I'm telling
And
you.
the 2 seasons of film we have on Justin Fields in which he chokes in the biggest games until this one.
And Zach, I don't want to feed into this because I'm not necessarily a believer in this ideology here. But when you compare Clemson, who's played in the conference, who has played the most games this season, compared to Ohio State's 6 games, they are fresher. This is a fresher team. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, yeah, he's had a couple weeks off. He's had a couple bye weeks basically with COVID. But this team overall is fresher. I'm not saying that's why they won the game. I think that just being fresher doesn't win a game by this margin. But yeah, I think it certainly helps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I want to look at this game, you know, realistically. I mean, and I think I've only heard one or two experts talk about this, but how bad is this offensive line for Clemson truly?
Right. Right. Right.
They were terrible. They were terrible against Notre Dame. They were terrible against Ohio State. And listen, I know that if Clemson would have pulled this out, me and you, Brandon, would have picked them against Bama.
Right.
Knowing us, they would have gotten eaten alive by that Bama defense.
Oh, absolutely. I
And,
mean,
I want to even go back to last year. Brandon, LSU ate that offensive line up last year.
yeah, that's true.
And, that brings me to another storyline that we wanted to address. Brandon, Clemson has been blown out their last 2 playoff games against LSU in the Natty and this one here. And they were lucky to win against Ohio State last year due to some crazy calls, but they pulled it out. So we want to address that one. But where does Clemson go from here? I mean, I know that everyone's saying Dabo Swinney's built one of the best programs in the country, but Nick Saban could tell you how hard it is to have a real dynasty. And I don't think they have a dynasty yet. They've only won 2 titles. They have to win another. Brandon, how did they get there? And where do they go from here with Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence probably also the draft?
What I will say is that they better be, and this is kind of speaking to the last name out their line, but I don't know how they did it, but they flipped Tristan Lee recently. He committed to Clemson yesterday. Well, yesterday, now that we're recording, on Saturday. I mean, that's a great pickup for them. And so hopefully that'll help. I don't really know what you do. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and criticize Dabo or this Clemson team because I think that they are well on their way to being a dynasty. I mean, if they're not already, they've been in every college football playoff except for the first one, right? And
Yeah.
and so, I mean, how is that not a dynasty? I get it; they've only won 2 national championships, but this, I mean, we can't really compare Clemson and Alabama right now because Alabama has had this dynasty. I mean, I think it probably started in 2009 with the first
Oh,
championship.
nine. Yeah.
And so, I mean, Clemson's first championship of the century was in 2016. So, I mean, that's a 7-year head start. I mean, I think you had to give a little bit of time. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, Clemson has to fix this, fix that. I think that things will get sorted out. I think Dabo knows what he's doing. He is a great head coach, as much as I dislike him. And so I'm not sure that Clemson's really doing anything inherently wrong.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, so ESPN released an article today, Brandon, about this storyline, which is where, we got it from. And they said that the 3 top things that need to happen is Sweeney has to change, that they have to build an O-line, and that how do they replace 2 legends, and how does Brent Venables adjust? Because if you look at their 2 losses, I mean, what happened to that defense, man? We talk about how good Venables is. LSU, Ohio State, all put up ridiculous numbers on them. And, one of the stats was from 2014 to the end of 2019, Brandon, Clemson's defense allowed 500 yards or more 3 times.
Right.
In the past 16 games, it's already happened 4.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
it's difficult. I don't really know.
I think they're going to have to adjust, kind of like Alabama did, man. Nick Saban built something huge at LSU, Brennan. He left, right after it really hit its peak. And,
Right.
If he stays at LSU probably has 6 titles right now, if he stayed as long as
Yeah.
in Alabama. But he left. He went to the Dolphins. He was building something nice there, came back to Bama, and now we have this. He has adjusted of it because, they won in 09, they won 11 and 12. And then there was that small kind of break where they got beat a few years, and he had to adjust on replacing assistants, replacing players, and all that. And so it makes me look at Dabo Swinney like, how are you going to handle this? Because now you're losing Lawrence. When you lost Deshaun, you got lucky you had Lawrence. Is DJ the next big guy? How do you replace that TM? How do you replace a guy like Isaiah Simmons last year that was a top pick? How do you replace all these guys? And then, people didn't talk about this at all this year, Brandon. He lost his longtime offensive coordinator, Jeff Scott.
Right.
And now when Tony Elliott dips out, that offense looked anemic at times.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
And so I just think he's less experienced than Saban, man. And it's going to take him some time to figure out how to build almost like, I'm not going to say one and done because I have to stay for 3 years, but Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, they're the closest programs to like one and done college football programs.
Right.
That someone like Trevor Lawrence isn't staying 4 years. So Alabama, I mean, Brandon, do we we can create an hour episode talking about every player who didn't stay for 4 years?
Probably, yeah.
I
Close
mean,
to it.
yeah, close to it, if not. And so he has to adjust in that end. His assistants have to adjust. And, I think he gets a lot of flack, man. I mean, and I don't hate him for it. I know some people do. I know you hate him for it. I know a lot of fans hate him for it. I don't mind his confidence, but you have to express it in a different way. Because you look at someone like back in the 90s when Jimmy Johnson, when he was coaching for the Cowboys, said, we're going to go out there and whoop the 49ers, you know what? And his team went out there and backed it up. But it's a lot different when you're playing with Deion Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, all that. Dabo he talks so much crap, man. But the way he's about it arrogantly and just up and above, I don't know a coach that gives another team more bulletin board material than Dabo Swinney.
So it's not his confidence that bothers me, Zach. It's the fact that he thinks that Clemson's this underdog that they're just not. It's the same. It's the same thing that the Golden State Warriors went through a couple of years ago when they were just juggernauts, and they're like, "Oh,
when they got Kevin Durant, they were like, we might finish last in the West."
Yeah, I mean that's what it is to me. It's that he acts like, "Oh, we're poor old Clemson," and they're just not.
Oh man, well, I mean, I think that stems from his background, man, because he was poor old Dabo Swinney, walk on in Alabama.
Okay.
He was the assistant coach at Clemson. When he got hired, everyone was like, who in the world is this dude? Brandon, he was never even a coordinator before he got a head coaching job.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen?
No, I mean, not often.
You're like, definitely not. And, I'm interested in, listen, guys, if you listen to this podcast, you have to listen to other college football podcasts. If you listen to a college football podcast that says Dabo Swinney should be on the hot seat, I need you to unsubscribe from their podcast.
Well,
ignorant take.
Yeah, probably the wrong take.
That is an ignorant take. If you listen to a podcast that says Justin Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence, I need you to unsubscribe as well, because that is a horrible take.
As a matter of fact, quit listening to any other college football podcast. We're the only one you need.
Exactly. But guys, that is a wrap on our college football playoff recap. We will be back this week, Thursday, with a national championship preview, guys. We are going to give y'all a full episode previewing Ohio State versus Bama, positional breakdowns, predictions, all that good stuff. So make sure to tune in. So like, rate, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Instagram at @the_Bluebloods, Facebook at the Bluebloods Pod, Twitter at the __Bluebloods, YouTube, the Bluebloods CFB Podcast, the website, the bluebloodspod.com. I always forget our website. That's a tough look. But go check us out on all those places, man. Y'all keep having a great new year, man. But we will be back again very, very soon. But for right now, we out.